Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor review to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at a couple of interesting off-season updates. We've got a couple of UFAs and some teams who might have some interest in them. We're looking at some interesting updates when it comes to a player signing overseas and the Sabre player who the Sabres are trying to move. And we've got some trade rumors involving the Islanders, the Flames, the Canucks, the Wild, and a whole bunch of teams. This is draft week. It's about to get busy. We've got a lot of things coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. We're so close. Let's try and hit 500 by the time we do our live draft video on Friday. Don't forget to stay tuned for Friday and Saturday's live streams at 5 p.m. and 10 a.m. Mountain Time talking about the draft, and then the one on July 1st at 9:30 a.m. talking about free agency. So definitely don't forget to stay tuned for that. Sorry for any background noise. There are some things happening here today, but in today's video, we got a lot of interesting things. There have been no signings over the weekend since our last trade rumor video, so not gonna get into anything there. But we do have a couple of very intriguing updates. We're gonna start off with one signing that happened overseas, and that's Jets prospect Lapponen, who I think had his first pro season this year. It was either the AHL level or the ECHL level. I signed back overseas, signing in Liga. So Lapponen was probably going to be AHL level guy, maybe an ECHL level guy, so he gets some more opportunities overseas. Maybe in a couple of years' time he come back to North America, but for the time being he goes to sign over in Liga, so very interesting note there. Going over to the Buffalo Sabres, I think it was Frank Saravalli who mentioned this, or David Pagnotta. One of those two did mention that the Buffalo Sabres are currently looking to trade or buy out Mattias Samuelsson. That is surprising, at least in my opinion. Samuelsson's a solid top four, defensive-minded, left-shot defenseman. He can work in a lot of teams' top fours. He's currently making $4 million for the next 5 to 6 years. So to see the Sabres want to move on from a guy like that's quite surprising, given the fact this team really needs to start trying to make it for the playoffs. So I don't see a buyout happening. Maybe it's a possibility. It could happen that a trade winds up happening, so we're going to have to wait and see. But keep your eye on Mattias Samuelsson. He is a name who the Buffalo Sabres could try and move on from, so we'll have to keep our eye on that. Going over to some free agent updates. When it comes to the free agents, Nick Perbix was a solid third-pair defenseman last year in Tampa. Ilya Samsonov, who was a solid backup goaltender in Vegas last year, and Cody Glass, who was acquired at the trade deadline by the New Jersey Devils from Pittsburgh. And on top of that was an RFA. He's not expected to get a qualifying offer, and all three of those guys, Perbix, Samsonov, and Glass, are all expected to hit free agency on July 1st. That's a very interesting note there. Samsonov was Vegas' backup. The Knights do have Akira Schmid in the system, so they can use him as the backup. He's a lot cheaper, so that's not too surprising. Perbix could probably get $2 or $3 million on the open market. That's a lot out of the Tampa Bay Lightning's price range, so that makes sense. Glass is a little bit surprising. I thought the Devils would have at least qualified him and tried to keep him around, but obviously it seems that they don't feel like he's worth a qualifying offer, so it sounds like they'll move on from him too, and he won't get a qualifying offer. So very interesting note there. But expect Glass, Samsonov, and Perbix to hit free agency on July 1st. And also going over to a couple of other interesting free agent updates. When it comes to Andrew Mangiapne, the Seattle Kraken and Toronto Maple Leafs are both expected to have some major interest in Mangiapane. Mangiapane is a really solid middle six forward. He had a 35-goal season a couple of years back. Since then, has barely been able to hit 20 goals, but he's still a really solid guy. On the right team, could probably put you up like 20 to 25 goals, around 50 points. So I think there could be a lot of interested parties for Mangiapane. It seems like Seattle and Toronto could have some major interest. When it comes to Jake Allen, according to a couple of recent reports, Philadelphia, Edmonton, San Jose are the three teams who may have some major interest in Allen. We know that the Oilers are trying to shake up their goaltending. I'm not sure if Allen's really the best option for the Edmonton Oilers, but I could see them try and get Allen to maybe sort of be an upgrade on Pickard. Philly's trying to add another goaltender. We've heard about that over the past couple of videos, and it makes sense. Like I said, Urson, Fedotov, they're good goaltenders, but they're not the guys who are going to get the Flyers team to the next level. I think Allen, maybe with an Erston type guy, could be a solid tandem in Philadelphia. And San Jose is about to lose Georgiev. They trade Vanecek at the deadline. They trade Blackwood in season. They only have Askarov, so they need someone who can really work well with Askarov in net. Allen and Askarov tandem would be great for the San Jose Sharks, because Allen could be the sort of mentor to Askarov and could sort of be the starter, and then eventually Askarov could take that role. So very interesting note there, but it seems that those three teams would all have some major interest in Jake Allen. Going over to the Anaheim Ducks, Ducks, apparently, if they do not get Mitch Marner in free agency, backup plans could be John Tavares or Brock Boeser. Those two make a whole bunch of sense. Boeser's a 40-goal scorer, and we've heard Tavares be linked as like a solid second or third line center in the Anaheim Ducks organization. So very interesting note there, but it sounds like if the Anaheim Ducks aren't able to get Mitch Marner, which at this point in time seems like it's a very likely possibility, their fallback plan might be Boeser or John Tavares if those two hit free agency. So that's what we see on that. And lastly, going over to New York Rangers, according to a lot of recent reports, everyone's expecting Vladislav Gavrikov, who seems like he's not going to be back with Los Angeles, to sign in the New York Rangers organization. It sounds like Gavrikov has a very short list, probably of like 5 to 10 teams who would be interested in signing with, and the Rangers seem to be at the forefront of that list. So it sounds like Rangers and Gavrikov are headed towards a contract at some point in free agency, so expect that to happen. Maybe the Rangers go a different direction, Gavrikov has a change of heart, maybe it's a different team that wants to sign Gavrikov, but all the indications at this point point to Gavrikov going to the New York Rangers organization. So very interesting note there. But those are the updates as Lapponen signed overseas. The Sabres could buy out or trade Samuelsson. Perbix, Samsonov, and Glass are heading to free agency. Seattle and Toronto could have interest in Mangiapne. Philly, San Jose, and Edmonton could all have interest in Allen. The Ducks could use Tavares and Boeser as backup plans if they lose out on Marner. And Gavrikov should probably sign an extension in free agency with the Rangers. So very interesting note there. And next, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So when it comes to the trade rumor portion, we've got 8 things here to talk about. I'm basically going to have trade rumor videos over the next couple of days leading up to the draft. There's going to be no other videos here except for trade recaps when trades actually do happen, and the mock draft, which I'm hoping to post some point on Wednesday, so don't forget to stay tuned for that. But we got 8 things to talk about here. So first, when it goes to the Dallas Stars, Chris Johnston says that the Stars may have a market in the trade market for Matt Dumba. There's been a lot of talk about Dumba being a bio candidate. According to Chris Johnston, he says, hold your horses, Dumba might be a potentiality to still get traded. So Dumba, I think, has one more season left on his contract at a $3.75 million cap hit, so it's a really high cap hit, which is why a lot of people thought he would potentially be bought out, but maybe some teams have some interest. So I would think teams who feel like Dumba can still be that 50-point defenseman he was all those years back, if they can get into the right situation, maybe be like a second or third pair defenseman, maybe there'll be a team or two out there who would have some interest. And if the Stars were to retain a tiny bit of money to make that sort of a deal work, I could definitely see a couple of teams at least have some interest, especially some teams who are in desperate need of a right shot defenseman. But if Dumba's already going to get bought out and they could sign him for like very cheap in free agency, then it might make more sense to do that. So we're going to wait and see on that. But Chris Johnston does say that the Stars may have a trade market for Matt Dumba, and while I think it's still more likely he gets bought out, I can see if the Stars will retain a little bit why there would be some teams who may have some interest in Matt Dumba, so I'll have to wait and see on that. Going over to Elliotte Friedman, he said that the Blue Jackets are poised to take a major swing this offseason. Now, he doesn't say if it's free agency, if it's the draft, if it's trading, like he doesn't say exactly what type of big swing, but he says that the Jackets are poised to take some sort of a massive move this offseason. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. I said before, the Jackets have 2 first-round picks, the 14th and 20th overall pick. It makes sense to trade one or both of them if they could get them some major upgrade. Like, I think a major upgrade for the Jackets would be a veteran type top 6 forward, would be a solid top 4 defenseman. Like, they already have a couple of really good blue liners, but maybe one more top 4 defenseman. Maybe going out and getting a goaltender, whether that be Demko or Gibson. Not exactly sure who, but I think an upgrade on Merzlikins has to be another priority too. So I'm not exactly sure what that major move is going to be, but I definitely think the Jackets will take it because they were a mere 2 points of a playoff spot this year. And I think with a couple of tweaks and maybe 1 or 2 big additions, this Jackets team could be a playoff bound team next year, potentially even top 3 in the Metro. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on the Jackets, as Friedman does say they are poised to take a big swing and they could be doing some very interesting things this offseason. Going over to the Philadelphia Flyers, according to David Pagnotta, the Flyers are a team who has checked in on Bo and Byram. So that's a very interesting concept there. The Flyers are a team I feel like should be selling and trying to get worth for the McKinnon draft next offseason. And if they think adding McKinnon to a team that already has Mangiapne would be a very fantastic add there for the Flyers. But the Flyers are a team who wants to try and get better in some realm, and Byram makes some sense. Like, this team doesn't have a whole bunch of solid elite level defensive players. They have Sanheim, they have Sealer, they have York, they have a couple of lower-end guys, Ristolainen. None of them are really solid top pair guys, except for maybe Sanheim. Byram is a top pair guy. He could be a very fantastic defensive addition there for the Philadelphia Flyers. So I definitely think it makes some sense for the Flyers to check in on Bo and Byram. Now, the ask, I think, would have to be like a first-round pick. Now, the Flyers have 3 of them, so that would make some sense. I would think probably York would have to be included, or a guy like Owen Tippett, maybe something else. Like, would it really make sense for the Flyers to go after Bo and Byram? Like, I think it would fill the hole they have in their blue line. Yes, that would make some sense, but I just don't know if it's the smartest move at this point in time for the Flyers. So personally, I don't see the Flyers going after Byram, but I can see why they might have some interest, so I'll have to wait and see on that. Going over to Connor McDavid, according to recent reports, after his playoff press conference, after the Oilers were eliminated, there was a lot taken out of that interview and his closing media press conference, and a lot of people, and even some credible insiders like Pierre LeBrun, Chris Johnston, and David Pagnotta, have all mentioned that it seems more and more likely that McDavid will take a shorter term deal on his next contract. Now, he may still sign for 8 years in Edmonton. That's still a possibility. He may test for agency next year in the offseason. That's still a possibility. But the consensus that seems to be growing right now is that McDavid will sign at some point in the offseason for like a 2 to 4 year deal. Somewhere around there, he'll get short term money. He'll be able to get like 15, 16, 17 million dollars on the AAV. And then in 2 to 3 years time, he'll be able to hit free agency again. And if the Oilers maybe won a cup or two since then, maybe he signs a long-term deal with the Oilers. Or if the Oilers are still cupless at that point in time, maybe he hits free agency at that point in time. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But I have seen a couple of very interesting and credible insiders say that McDavid might be more likely to take a short-term deal this offseason than sign an 8-year deal like Draisaitl did. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Going over to Elliotte Friedman, he mentions that the Wild offered Rossi a bridge deal, and Rossi declined it. According to Elliotte Friedman, he says that Rossi was offered a bridge deal. Might have to be like a 3 to 4 year deal, like $5-ish million, because that's what seemed like the Wild were trying to offer. And according to Friedman, he says that Rossi did not like his placement in the playoffs. He was a 4th line center for most of that postseason run, and he wants to be on a team where he can feel like he can be at least a top 2 center, if not a top line center. So it definitely seems at this point like Rossi's definitely going to get moved. We've heard Calgary be linked, we've heard Vancouver be linked, we've heard Montreal be linked. According to David Pagnotta, he mentions that the Sabres are currently linked to Marco Rossi as well, which makes some sense. That the Sabres could definitely use another top 2 center. They're trying to shake up that team, trying to do some sort of a reset. So that would make some sense in my opinion too. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But keep your eye on Marco Rossi, as after being offered a bridge deal, he declined it in Minnesota, which doesn't come as much as a surprise to me, as he really wants a longer term deal with high AAV, wants to be in a place where he can play top line minutes, and apparently Buffalo could be a team who has some interest. So we'll have to wait and see on the Sabres, and that also comes as no surprise to me. Going over to the Vancouver Canucks, according to David Pagnotta, he wonders if the Vancouver Canucks could move Thatcher Demko for a young cost control top 6 forward. So I know the Canucks are about to move on from Brock Boeser. He's about to hit free agency. He's not going to get brought back, it sounds like. So they need some more work done in their top 6. Like, they're going to lose Brock Boeser. They just traded JT Miller in the offseason. Like, they need a second line center. They're probably going to need 1 to 2 top 6 wingers. So Pagnotta mentions, and I completely agree with this too, he wonders if a top 6 young cost control forward could pry Demko out of Vancouver. And I think that would make some sense. They signed Lankinen in season to a long-term deal. They have Seelovs, who had a really solid run this year in the postseason for the Vancouver Canucks in the AHL affiliate for them. So with that in mind, I think a Seelovs, Lankinen tandem work fine next year for the Vancouver Canucks. And with Demko finally going for his deal, with his injury troubles and all the things like that, I think it would make a ton of sense to move on from Thatcher Demko right now. And if they can get a top 6 forward who's maybe on the younger side of things, who could work well with the Vancouver Canucks, I think that'll make some sense. The name that comes to mind that I keep on thinking to myself would be a very smart move there for the Canucks would be Cole Sillinger in Columbus. Like, the Jackets need a goaltender. We talked about them just a little while ago, needing some goalie help. Sillinger, I think at this point in time, is like a 3rd line center in Columbus, but I think he can play 2nd line center minutes. I know he is on the smaller side, but I think his upside is really good. So I think if the Jackets and Canucks could work out something like a Demko for Stillinger deal, like I think the Canucks would do that in a heartbeat. And I think there would be a couple of other teams out there too would have some young top 6 forwards who they could try and give to the Vancouver Canucks to pry Demko out of Vancouver. So I'll have to wait and see on that. But Pagnotta does wonder if a top 6 forward, a younger guy, could end up prying Demko out of Vancouver. Next, going over to Rasmus Andersson. According to Elliotte Friedman on his recent 32 Thoughts blog, he mentions that Rasmus Andersson is very likely to not sign an extension in the Calgary Flames organization this offseason. He says that it seems like Andersson wants a change of scenery, wants a fresh start. Now, I've seen a couple of people say that the Flames could hold on to Andersson and maybe trade him as like the premium guy at the trade deadline and try and get a huge return at that point, which is a possibility, but then you also risk losing injuries or him having a bad season. I've also seen some people say maybe he can try and be traded now, especially if Aaron Ekblad signs in Florida. If Ekblad does wind up signing in Florida and not hit free agency, that's a major right shot defenseman off the market for a lot of teams, and that would instantly flip the focus to Rasmus Andersson. Now, Andersson has 1 year left. He's entering the final year of his deal. He's got $4.5 million cap hit, but he's a solid top pair right shot defenseman. Now, I think on the free agent market next year, he could get $8 to $9 million on an AAV on a long-term deal. So I definitely think that with that sort of a cap hit, it seems that the Flames don't really want to sign him to that sort of a deal. So it definitely seems like he's going to get moved. David Pagnotta in particular wonders if the Ottawa Senators might try and pursue Andersson and how hard they may try and do it. Like at this point, I think it would take a first-round pick, a solid player, and maybe a good prospect for Andersson. And we've heard Andersson's name be linked to Ottawa in the past, and Pinto be a guy that the Flames really want to try and acquire. So would the Senators really move Shane Pinto in order to acquire Rasmus Andersson? I'm not exactly sure if that would make a smart move there for the Ottawa Senators, but with the Sens needing some more top 4 help on the right side, I could see him try and have some major interest in Andersson. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But according to Elliotte Friedman, Andersson will not sign with Calgary. He wants to try something new, and Pagnotta wonders if the Sens could try and pursue him. And lastly, going over to the New York Islanders, Frank Seravalli and Elliotte Friedman have both mentioned this, and basically just to sum it up, Dobson could be on the move by the New York Islanders. Dobson, who is currently 12th on the end-to-end hockey trade bait list. Once again, check it out if you haven't already. Lots of intriguing names on my trade bait list. But according to Friedman and Seravalli, Dobson is a very likely name to get traded. I talked about this in our last video, how it sounded like Dobson wanted $10+ million on his AAV, and after that, the Islanders sort of started to try and put feelers out there, see what they could try and get for Dobson. So Seravalli's mentioned that there's a possibility Dobson could get moved at some point this week, potentially even before the draft. So it'll be a very interesting concept there to see Dobson get moved. He's a top pair right shot defenseman, and I think there would be a plethora of teams who would love to add him, even if they would have to pay him $9 to $10 million on an AAV. I think there would be a ton of teams who would pay a lot, like a first-round pick, top player, really good prospect for a guy like Noah Dobson. So I personally do think Dobson has a very likely chance to get dealt, because I do think the Islanders could very likely try and go through some sort of a retool or reset and try and go for McKenna next year, even though they already got the first-round pick this year. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there, but I think Dobson is a very likely chance to get moved, at least in my opinion. I left your guys' thoughts though. So that's all I'm going to talk for today. I left your guys' thoughts. What do you think about Dobson? Does he get moved? What do you think about Andersson? Does he get moved? Could Ottawa have some interest? Do you think the Canucks move Demko for a young forward? Do you think that the Wild move Rossi, and could the Sabres have some interest? Do you think McDavid takes a short-term deal? Do you think the Flyers check in on Bo and Byram? Do you think that the Jackets try and take a big swing this offseason? And do you think the Stars will try and move Matt Dumba in the trade market? Definitely your thoughts on all of that, plus all the other updates we talked about earlier in the video. I left you guys' thoughts on all of that. So definitely that's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and for the later, remember to subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for June 27th, June 28th, and July 1st live streams talking about the draft, free agency, and other things. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, and for that, so check that out. I'll link to that down in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.